The diamond ring did not fall loudly, and that was what made it terrifying, because in the middle of a crowded cafe in downtown Portland, Oregon, a fortune slipped from a billionaire's hand and vanished into silence, while the woman who would change his life was wiping coffee stains from a chipped wooden table, unaware that fate had just rolled across the floor toward her shoes. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the idea that small moments can completely transform lives, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel, because stories like this remind us that the world still has room for unexpected miracles. The waitress's name was Grace Whitmore, a 24-year-old woman whose life had been reduced to routines and quiet survival after losing her mother 2 years earlier and becoming the sole provider for her younger brother, Noah. Every morning she walked 3 miles to the cafe, every night she counted tips down to the last dollar, and every day she told herself that this temporary life of exhaustion and invisible effort was not the end of her story. On that particular afternoon, the cafe was unusually full, filled with business people, students, and one sharply dressed man sitting alone near the window, whose presence felt heavier than the rest. His name was Jonathan Pierce, a tech billionaire known for building an empire and losing a soul somewhere along the way. He had just finalized a deal worth hundreds of millions and was preparing to propose to a woman he barely knew, more out of loneliness than love, carrying a diamond ring worth more than the cafe itself. Grace noticed the ring only because she was trained to notice everything that fell, spilled, or broke. She saw a faint sparkle near the leg of Jonathan's chair while cleaning, something unnatural in a place where the brightest thing was usually a cracked phone screen. When she bent down and picked it up, her breath stopped, not because she understood its value, but because she understood what desperation looked like, and this object represented both hope and disaster at once. For a brief moment, the weight of her life pressed against the possibility in her hand, and the thought crossed her mind that this ring could pay for her brother's education, her rent, her freedom. But the thought dissolved as quickly as it appeared, replaced by something deeper and heavier, the memory of her mother teaching her that integrity was the only thing no one could ever take from you. Jonathan did not realize the ring was gone until he stood to leave, until panic replaced confidence and his face lost the smooth mask of control he wore in public. He searched his pockets, the table, the floor, and something unfamiliar crept into his chest, not fear of loss, but fear of exposure, because the ring was not just jewelry, it was proof that he was still trying to feel something real in a world where everything had become transactional. When Grace approached him with the ring in her palm, his world paused, not because of gratitude, but because he was confronted with someone who had nothing to gain and everything to lose, yet still chose to return what was not hers. What Jonathan did not know was that Grace had once lost everything because someone else chose not to be honest, and that this moment was not about him at all, but about her refusing to become the kind of person who let pain rewrite her values. Their interaction was brief, but something shifted, and Jonathan felt it in a way he had not felt anything in years. He offered her money, more than she made in a month, then more than she made in a year, but Grace refused without drama, without pride, without expecting praise, simply because doing the right thing was not something she believed should be paid for. That night, Jonathan could not sleep, not because of the deal, not because of the proposal, but because of the look in Grace's eyes, the kind of tired honesty that came from someone who had nothing to hide and nothing to pretend. For the first time in his life, he realized that he had spent decades surrounded by people who wanted something from him, and one woman who had needed everything had asked for nothing. The next morning, instead of boarding his private jet, he returned to the cafe, not as a billionaire, but as a man searching for something he had lost long before the ring ever slipped from his hand. Over the following weeks, Jonathan learned Grace's story without her ever asking him for help, learned about Noah's medical bills, the apartment they were about to lose, the way Grace skipped meals so her brother could eat. He saw how she treated customers with patience, how she smiled through exhaustion, how she never once complained about a life that had given her every reason to. And something inside him broke open, something he had locked away behind contracts and luxury and control, the realization that wealth meant nothing if it never turned into impact. Jonathan paid off Noah's medical debts anonymously. He funded Grace's college education through a scholarship that appeared without explanation. He invested in the cafe, saving the jobs of everyone who worked there. But the biggest change was not in Grace's life, it was in his own, because for the first time, he felt rich in a way that could not be measured, rich in purpose, in humility, in connection. Grace never knew the full extent of what Jonathan did, and Jonathan never asked for recognition, because the truth he uncovered that day was not about her honesty, it was about his emptiness. The diamond ring had not revealed her character, it had exposed his own, and in losing it, he had finally found something priceless, the understanding that real wealth begins the moment you stop using money to protect yourself from the world and start using it to serve it. If this story is touching your heart, if it reminds you that kindness still exists even in the smallest unnoticed moments, please take a second to like, share, and comment, because your engagement helps stories like this reach people who might need hope today. And before the ending, I have one special request. Please comment the word integrity if you believe doing the right thing matters even when no one is watching. In the end, the ring was never meant to propose love, it was meant to reveal it, and in a quiet cafe in the United States, a billionaire learned that the most valuable thing he could ever receive was not something he bought, but something he was given freely by a woman who refused to trade her soul for survival.